Every Friday, become a better baker than you were last week. Clara Whitmore could still hear her father's voice saying it, even 6 years after his funeral. Even now, standing in the kitchen of the small house she'd just moved into across town. Then, let the very first dessert remind someone they've not been forgotten, he used to say, sliding a warm tray toward her before either of them had taken a bite. People eventually forget the taste of what you bake. They'll never forget how you made them feel when the world had stopped noticing they existed. Clara was 30 now, owner of a boutique bakery known across the city for desserts that looked more like small sculptures than food. She could have afforded a house in any neighborhood she wanted. She'd chosen this one on purpose, modest, quiet, full of elderly residents who'd been left behind by children too busy to call, in a way that felt, to Clara, exactly like the kind of street her father would have baked for first. Her second morning in the new house, an elderly neighbor named Ruth stopped her at the mailbox, voice dropping to a warning whisper. "Stay away from that one," Ruth said, nodding toward the house directly across the street. "Silas Calloway, man doesn't speak to a soul, bit my nephew's head off just for parking on his curb." Clara looked at the house, closed blinds, overgrown hedge, a porch light that never seemed to turn on. She said nothing. But that Friday, when her father's tradition came due, she found herself standing on Silas Calloway's front step anyway, setting down a small white box tied with string, knocking on nothing, expecting nothing, and walking straight back home. He didn't answer the door. She hadn't expected him to. The following Friday she left another box, and another the Friday after that. Weeks passed this way, no words exchanged, no thanks offered, just a quiet ritual repeating itself across a narrow street neither of them ever crossed. Then, one Friday, the box wasn't on the porch when she checked from her window the next morning. It was gone entirely, string and all, and something in Clara's chest loosened slightly, though she couldn't have said exactly why it mattered so much. Silas Calloway was 41, and to the rest of the neighborhood, he was little more than a rumor with a short temper attached. Nobody asked why he'd become that way. They'd simply stopped trying, the way people do with anything that seems too complicated to bother understanding. He told himself the boxes meant nothing. He ate the pastries anyway, alone at his kitchen table, in a silence that had become the only language he trusted anymore. Months into the tradition, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, Clara's car refused to start in her driveway, engine turning over and dying, over and over, while she sat gripping the wheel, with a delivery order due across town in 20 minutes. She didn't see him cross the street. She only heard the toolbox click open beside her hood. Silas worked in silence for nearly 10 minutes, hands moving with a competence that suggested this wasn't the first engine he'd ever coaxed back to life. When he straightened up, wiping his hands on his jeans, he said only, "It should run now," and turned to walk back to his house before she could properly thank him. "Wait," Clara called after him. He stopped, though he didn't turn around. "Thank you," she said, "for tonight, and for the last few months actually." He was quiet long enough that she thought he might simply keep walking. Then without facing her, he said, "Didn't do it for thanks," and went home. It was the first full sentence he'd spoken to her in 5 months of quiet Fridays. After that night, small conversations began finding their way into the space between them. A few minutes on her porch, after a late bakery shift, a passing comment about the weather that slowly, over weeks, deepened into something closer to real talk. Clara never pushed. She'd learned from her father that grief, like bread dough, couldn't be rushed without ruining the whole thing. "You don't ask me anything," Silas said one evening, sitting 2 porch steps below her, staring at nothing in particular. "Would you answer if I did?" Clara asked. He almost smiled. Almost. Probably not. But eventually, in pieces too small to notice arriving, he did answer, fragments about a life he never named directly, a career he refused to describe, a loss so large he could only circle it from a distance without ever looking straight at it. It was Ruth, of all people, who finally told Clara the rest. "You really don't know who that man used to be?" Ruth asked one afternoon, lowering her voice as if the whole street might overhear. Silas Calloway was one of the best wilderness guides in the country, led hikers and riders through mountain terrain nobody else would touch, married a woman he adored. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. She died on one of his climbs. Her family blamed him publicly, humiliated him out of the whole town they used to live in. He hasn't touched a trail, a horse, or hardly another person since. Clara sat with that information a long time before she ever mentioned it to him. She didn't confront him with it. She didn't offer pity or careful questions designed to draw the story out of him faster than he was ready to give it. She simply kept showing up. Fridays, porch steps, small ordinary evenings, letting her presence say what her father's boxes had said from the very beginning. You have not been forgotten. One night, months later, Silas finally said it himself, voice low, eyes fixed somewhere past her shoulder. I used to believe I could get anyone through anything, he said. Then I couldn't get the one person who mattered most through anything at all. Everyone made sure I never forgot that. You've just been the only one still punishing yourself for it. Easier to punish myself, he admitted, than risk caring about anyone again. And now? Clara asked. He looked at her for a long moment. Really looked. The way he hadn't let himself look at anyone in years. Now, he said, I look forward to Fridays more than I've looked forward to anything in a long time. Their relationship never rushed forward the way easier stories might have written it. It grew the way real things grow, slowly, through small kindnesses repeated until trust simply became a habit neither of them noticed forming. In time, what began as boxes left silently on a porch became something neither Clara nor Silas had expected to find again. A quiet, steady, deeply patient kind of love. Together they turned Clara's father's old tradition into something larger than either of them had imagined alone. Every Friday evening, their street now gathers for a simple community dinner. Homemade meals, warm company, and an open door for anyone carrying grief nobody else has noticed. Silas slowly has even returned to leading a few careful trail walks for local seniors, proof that the things we love most rarely leave us for good, even after loss convinces us otherwise. Clara still remembers her father's words every single Friday, though now they mean something new. People forget the taste of what you bake. They never forget how you made them feel when the world had stopped noticing they existed. And sometimes, if you're patient enough, that same kindness finds its way back to you, wrapped in string, waiting quietly on your own front step. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.